Okay, we're now streaming on Facebook.
Don't see us.
Oh, there. I'll see something happen. There we go. Go ahead and click on that.
All right, I think we are live on Facebook. Do I watch it through Facebook or Zoom? I'm not even sure how I watch. Okay, I'm just gonna watch it through
Facebook.
Okay.
We're there.
Are we coming up on Facebook?
Looks like we are coming up on Facebook. Yes. We're frozen on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it look like people can see us?
It does. It's freezing a little bit though. Somebody says it works.
Somebody says it works. Okay, I've got to record this through Zoom, right? Or two?
You might want to just to.
Yeah, just in case. How do I? Okay, record. Record on this computer, I guess. Okay. All right. Hit record on this computer. Hopefully it'll do it.
Okay, people are saying hi and they've joined. So I guess.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I think. All right, it's 1 o'clock, so we are ready to get started. Hi there, my name is Carrie Bible. I'm coming to you from my little vintage Hollywood kitchen right outside of Hollywood in Los Angeles, California. When I first came up with the idea to do this series, my concept of it was for it to be part dinner party with friends, part tour of memorabilia and talk show kind of thing, and also part food cooking demonstration, which admittedly is kind of lower on the list, but I thought it would be sort of a combination of all these things. And then the pandemic hit and kind of threw a lot of my plans into chaos, which I think everybody can relate to that. But I thought we would try to do these live over Facebook and Zoom, which is probably the next best thing and what we can do right now. So today I have a very special guest, my first guest, and I'm so excited. I'd like to welcome Christina Rice, and I want to brag about you a moment. Christina is the head of the photo archive for the Los Angeles Public Library. She is a film historian. She is the absolute authority on Ann Dvorak and has written this fantastic book that we're going to talk about, Ann Dvorak, Hollywood's Forgotten Rebel. We're going to see some memorabilia, talk all things Ann. It's her 109th birthday, Christina tells me today, so we're going to celebrate that. And then lastly, but maybe not least, we're going to make Ann's fruit salad a la Jell. So it's going to be an exciting afternoon full of fun. And also with us is Gable, named after Clark Gable. Yay! The crowd goes wild. Gable is going to help. Gable is a Girl Scout, a very smart, enterprising young lady. She's going to help moderate your questions, your comments, and help us out on the show today. So without further ado, they need a crowd goes wild button on social media, I think. Please welcome Christina Rice and Gable.
Hey.
Yay! Thank you guys so much for doing this with me.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Any excuse to talk about my all-time favorite subject.
Excellent. Well, it's funny because when we talked about doing this, it just the date that we came up with wound up being her birthday.
Yeah.
Which is, it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. I'm ashamed it took me about 10 minutes to realize that though.
Well, we all have a lot on our minds these days. It's a
foggy mind. I couldn't even remember Ann's birthday instantly. So I'm sorry, Ann. Try to make up for that.
Oh, we're going to make up for it today, actually. Yes. So to start the show off with, tell me how you first came to know about Ann Dvorak. What was your introduction to Ann?
Yeah, so I first encountered Ann when I was in college. So it was probably, I think, around 1995. And I have always been a classic movie fan from the time I was, way younger than Gable. But when I was in college was that period where I was just binging every movie I could get my hands on. And I had, memberships to every video store around town and library cards to check out movies. And so I would just kind of watch anything and everything. And so I was at my local library in my hometown, Glendora. I was at the Glendora Public Library, and they had in their classics rack, they had a VHS copy of a movie called Three on a Match, which had been put out under the Forbidden Hollywood line, which was a series.
I remember that.
Right? So there was like Babyface and Redheaded Woman, and Three on a Match was one of them. And hold on, baby. And so I looked at the back, 63 minutes long, and there was sex, and there was drugs, and there was Betty Davis and Humphrey Bogart, and I thought, how could I go wrong?
Yeah.
And so, yes, so I, checked it out, took it home, immediately stuck it in the VCR, and there was Anne. And I had never heard of her before, and I don't think I've ever been so completely blindsided by a performance. Like, she is just absolutely jaw-droppingly amazing in this film. And I was so awestruck that when the movie ended, my mom came home from work, and I just said, Mom, sit down. And I hit the rewind button and just watched it again. And not too long after, I watched Scarface and G-Men, not because I realized she was in it. I just happened to watch them, and there she was again. And by the time I watched G-Men, I was just completely hooked on Anne and thought, why don't I know who she is? Like, she's exceptional. How could we not know? How is she not another Betty Davis? And so I initially thought, well, maybe she just got married and retired early. But when I dug out my Leonard Maltin film guide and looked her up, she made movies into the 50s. And, this was the mid 90s. The internet was around, but it wasn't really a source. I was young. I didn't really know how to research at that time. So I just couldn't find out much about her. And so I kind of just put her on the back burner, like she was there, but, didn't really pursue it. And then a couple of years later, when I was getting ready to graduate, I majored in film in college, and I did an internship at a below the line talent agency. And the person I reported to was the assistant, and he was a fellow named Darren. And he was the first like full on classic film buff I had ever met. And I felt like a complete hack compared to him. And so in an attempt to be impressive, I said, oh, who I really like, and I just can't find anything on, is Ann Dvorak. And Darren was a memorabilia collector. He collected on Norma Shearer. And I think anybody who's collected on memorabilia long enough ends up with a giant stack of stuff that they don't actually collect on. And so the next time I went into the office, he walked in and handed me this photo. Oh, wow. And it's a still of Anne from Three on a Match that he just happened to have, and he gave it to me. And that was it. I was just completely sunk. And from there, we started going, like on our lunch breaks, we would go to the movie memorabilia shops around town. This was 1997, so there were still a lot of shops around Hollywood.
I miss those days.
I miss those days too. I desperately miss those days of digging through memorabilia shops. And he took me to the Margaret Herrick Library, where there was the clipping file on Anne. And it was at that point that I decided I was going to be her biographer. And then I don't know how many, like 15, 16 years later, the book was finished. So was there questions or?
Something just happened right here.
Okay.
And somebody can't figure it out.
Somebody can't figure it out. I wonder if it's my mother.
No, it's not.
No. Okay. Content isn't available right now. I don't know. Okay. We will continue.
I'm about to ask you about the pronunciation of Dvorak versus Dvorak.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of people are really focused on that. So it wasn't actually her name. So her given name was McKim. So Dvorak, however you want to pronounce it, was something that she adopted as a stage name. So she initially wanted it to be pronounced Dvorak, but almost out of the gate, the common pronunciation was Dvorak. So she just conceded defeat really early on. And so I've always called her Dvorak, since day one. I think it's all fine because it wasn't actually her name. Interestingly, when she was at MGM as a chorus girl, towards the end of her tenure there, she started going by, she had signed on using her mother's name, Anna Lair, and then she adopted Dvorak, and it was spelled, I have, publicity shots from MGM where it's spelled Devorak, Dvorak. And then when she signed her contract with Howard Hughes in 1931, she spelled it D''Vorak. So, I don't even think she really knew. I assume she, took it from the composer. But I think either way, however you pronounce it is fine. I usually just call her Anne. She's just Anne.
Excellent, excellent. So we would love to see some of your memorabilia and your really incredibly comprehensive Anne collection.
Yeah, I am more than happy. Do we want to start? Should we start boiling water? Are you boiling water?
Yeah, why don't we start boiling the water first?
Water. And Carrie, I do want to let you know ahead of time, I have drastically altered the original recipe. I decided I needed to make something that my family will actually consume. So my salad a la Jell is not going to be a replica of the one from Anne. Mainly my husband's a diabetic, so I'm just using sugar-free Jell-O.
And I'm actually using this Jell-O. You know what's funny is I was trying to find just regular gelatin that didn't already have like a lot of the things in it, like Anne mentions in the book, and I couldn't find it. So, by the way, everybody, this recipe is coming to us today from 125 recipes of movie stars from the 1930s. And this is the page with Anne's recipe, which I will post after the show is over. I have an embarrassing confession for you. I apparently am not real skilled at making Jell-O. You know how Friday night we had our dress rehearsal and we made the Jell-O? Well, Saturday morning I get up and I track the Jell-O. It is absolutely like water. And I was like, oh no. Then I thought, well, I was having so much fun with you guys. Maybe I just went crazy and poured a bunch of extra stuff in and I ruined it. Okay. So last night I made another batch. Well, then I woke up at 5 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. And I went to check the Jell-O. And it was like water again. And I was like, how did I screw it up twice? I followed the directions so specifically. I was tempted to call you, but I figured you would not be happy if I called you at 5 a.m. with a Jell-O crisis. So
I love you, but no.
And I tried to fix it myself. And then I tried to put it back in the fridge. I tripped and fell on the way to the fridge and spilled the Jell-O on the floor. Long story made short, I've had some Jell-O problems. Big Jell-O problems. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think like my Jell-O box very specifically said to not use pineapple. So I'm wondering if pineapple.
You know, I think so, because when I followed the recipe to the letter, I did everything the box said, and I still put the fruit in. I blamed the shortening that I used to grease the Jell-O molds. That's what I thought was my big mistake, but I guess not, because the pineapple's so juicy on its own.
Yeah. That might be my family. My mother is a really huge fan of Jell-O molds, and yet we've had many Jell-O mold mishaps over the years. So I don't think it's uncommon.
Okay. I don't feel so bad then.
We've had many a runny Jell-O on our Jell-O mold on our Thanksgiving table. She once did one with artichoke hearts. That one really slid down into the garbage disposal nicely at the end of it.
Okay, so should we go boil our water?
Yes, I have my little kettle right here, so I'm gonna turn on my kettle to boil.
I have to get up just a second to get to mine.
And okay, we have questions. Danny Miller, hey Danny. Let's see. He says pineapple messes up the gelatin. I think you're right. And you need to use canned pipe. Oh, okay. We're learning a lot about Jell-O. Danny asked, is she related to child star Sammy McKim? No, I don't believe she is. That's not something I came across. So McKim was her dad, who was born and raised in Pittsburgh. And his name was Edwin Samuel McKim. And he was the superintendent of sewers in Pittsburgh and had a very promising career in local government, and then got bitten by the acting bug. And so he became a stage actor and traveled around the country in tours, and then eventually became a director. And he directed for the Lubin Company and did a lot of shorts and wrote for them before retiring. But I don't think there's any relationship to Sammy McKim, but her dad was Samuel McKim. Okay, so that is boiling. Do we want to see some memorabilia?
I would love to.
Okay. Can you get, well, that box is gigantic. Can you get that box up? This one? Yeah. It's super heavy. Okay. So, I could probably spend the next 22 hours showing you memorabilia from my Anne collection. So I had to be very, very selective and pare it down. So I've been collecting on Anne for almost 23 years now. I am an Anne completist. So I will purchase anything and everything on Anne, as long as it's not like a reproduction. So I'm super snobby about my memorabilia, that it needs to be original. But I will absolutely buy anything. So I thought I would just show you some of my lobby cards. I absolutely love, love, love lobby cards. For those of you that are unfamiliar, every film back in the day would have a set of, usually would have a set of 8 lobby cards. And they're wonderful mini posters that are easy to frame and easy to store. This is one of my absolute gems. So it's an original lobby card from Scarface.
Oh, she's so good in that movie.
She's amazing. It was her first acting role. So she started off as a chorus girl and an extra at MGM, and then was discovered by Howard Hawks, who was the director of Scarface, and she got this starring role. She was so good, she got second billing behind Paul Muni. She's 19 years old. If you've never seen it, like, yes, the De Palma film with Al Pacino is a remake of this. I'm partial to this one, though. I think it's just a searing, incredible film.
It's very color. I mean, they're clearly having a very incestuous kind of brother-sister relationship. It's very wild.
Oh, there's some weird stuff going on between Tony and Cheska, who are brother and sister, which bizarrely the production code administration was more focused on the violence, and that whole thing seemed to go completely over their head, which I think is interesting. This particular card I saw for the first time, I think it was in 2001, at the Beverly Garland Hotel. There used to be a memorabilia show there. It was, to this day, remains my favorite memorabilia show. It was 5 rooms. They did it, I think, every other month or every 3 months. And I saw it there, and this was in 2001, I think. And they wanted, I think, either 1,500 or 2,500. So it was an amount I could have never afforded at the time. And then I finally got it last year. It was only the 3rd time I've ever seen it. So this is a relatively new addition to my collection. And I love it because it's just beautiful.
What were the colors back then? It seems like the art and the colors were so rich and beautiful back then.
Yeah, because they would, hand color these. And Gable said we have questions. Yes, Gable.
We have Benjamin Medner says, which one of her movies is a must-see?
I'm Scarface. I think Scarface, like 3 on a Match, I love. I think 3 on a Match is a must-see. Scarface is a must-see. Even if Anne wasn't in it, I think it's the strongest of the gangster films of the early 30s. Again, it's Howard Hawks. It's so stylistic. Everybody's fantastic. George Raft, Boris Karloff is in it. It is just absolutely incredible. And I found out in preparation for this, it is on Peacock. So it is streaming for free on Peacock. So if you want to watch Scarface today, after this is over, you can go do it now. So definitely Scarface, as well as 3 on a Match. And speaking of 3 on a Match, I have 2 lobby cards from 3 on a Match. So here's one of them. If you haven't seen the film, don't pay too much attention to this card. It's a bit of a spoiler. But this is a card that I just got. I got my first 3 on a Match lobby card in 2002, and then my second one last year. So, if you want to be a completist in the hobby, you need to be prepared to do it for a really long time. And then one of my favorite Ann Dvorak kind of sub pastimes is Spot Ann in the MGM chorus. So I have, at this point, I think I have a couple hundred photos from Anne in the MGM chorus, because she made a number of films between 1929 and 1932. But she will even sometimes show up on the lobby cards. And you can spot Anne. There she is right there.
That's amazing detective work.
Yeah. Oh, I can spot Anne from a mile away. I think most people who know me now can. Like one of my favorite Ann Dvorak moments years and years ago, I was at Hearst Castle with Darren. So if I followed up with Darren, who I interned with, he's still my best friend all these years later, which I think largely is because of Anne. And I don't know, like about 15 years ago, we went up to Hearst Castle with my mom, and we watched, I don't know if they still do it, but they have an IMAX movie that's all about, you know, the life of Hearst and the building of San Simeon. And in one of the shots, there's a photo that passes on the screen, and it's like a Hearst newspaper truck. And then there's a bunch of chorus girls on top, because Marion Davies shot movies at MGM, so they must have been on the lot. So it's this Hearst truck with chorus girls sitting on the top of the truck, and Ann is one of them. And it just flashes on the screen for, you know, like 3 seconds. Darren and I both gasp, and both of us go, "Was that?" And my mom just goes, "Yeah, that was Ann." So anybody who knows me can spot Ann. This is
my water's boiling, so let me grab the water.
Mine's almost
We have
done.
another question.
We have another, but I'm going to show off. This is my other Ann Dvorak Chorus Girl lobby card. This is from a movie called Free and Easy with a guy you may have heard of named Buster Keaton. And then right here in the corner is our Ann. So I spot her from a mile away. And I put this down. So I'm going to. Abel says we have another question.
So Jenny Len says,
Hey, Jenny.
artichoke Jello, how about the ass pick and dinner at 8? Question.
That's a comment. That's a comment from our friend Jenny Lenz, who did a program at the library. Jenny is an amazing photographer who shot the punk scene. And I think if you go to lapl.org, I think we recorded Jenny's program, and I recommend it. Okay, we'll move on to Jello briefly.
Can I help you with the Jello?
You can help me with the
Moving
Jello.
on to the Jello.
Then we'll go back, and I have a few more lobby cards. All right, Gable. So we're doing half the recipe. Let's see. Right here, kiddo. Okay. Dump the mix. And we're gonna dissolve the Jello. So putting in a cup of boiling water.
Stir until dissolved.
Okay. Do you want to stir it, or do you want me to?
I'll stir it for a bit.
I'm gonna stir it for a bit. Okay.
Already turned on.
It is turning orange. So yes, there's all kinds of weird. We all have real Jello stories and comments.
And also, it's kind of funny because for years I've collected these vintage movie star cookbooks, which is kind of comical because I really don't cook. I'm like Little Miss Postmates. But the pandemic has kind of forced my hand on a lot of different things, and it's kind of forced me to go, you know, I can't order takeout all the time. I have to learn to make stuff. And I thought, well, this is a good excuse too to whip out some of those cookbooks. And a lot of his stars recipes are, someone told me on Twitter, which, well, I guess take with a grain of salt, I suppose, but that people would get really upset if I didn't make the recipes exactly to the historic specifications. And I'm like, you know, I'm not a masochist. I don't plan on giving myself a heart attack, so I'm just gonna have to modify things.
Also, you know, I think our palates are very different, and I can, you know, when my book came out in 2013, for my book release party, I wanted to do some Ann Dvorak recipes because I have a few, and so I wanted to like have the recipe on display and then the finished dish. And so I selected a pecan praline, a fudge, and a chutney. And so I made the chutney. My mom and I made the chutney for a test run, and we followed it to the letter. And it was quite possibly the most revolting thing I have ever eaten in my life. And so my mom said, no, you cannot serve this to people attending your book release party. So my mom just found a contemporary chutney recipe, and that filled in.
It was inspired by Ann.
Yeah, sure. And then the fudge that I made, that recipe had molasses in it. And so I went and molasses is something I do remember my grandmother having in her kitchen growing up. And I made the fudge with the molasses. It was more edible than the chutney, but of everything I, put out for the book release party, which we had at the library, and we had like the general public was there, so anybody could come in and, eat the Ann spread. And there was some of the molasses fudge left over. So I am not a purist when it comes to movie stuff. Pecan praline was very good. And I will say the molasses lasted, was in my cabinet for I think the next 5 years before I
You
finally.
could honestly tar a roof with molasses. I truly believe that.
It was, yeah. I don't recommend it. Okay.
And now we stir in the cold water.
Okay, so now we have our cold
And
water.
more lemon.
I think we'll do the lemon after.
Okay.
We'll put
Now,
in.
what I'm wondering to any Jell-O authorities out there is, if I put in oranges or grapefruit, is that going to be a succulent enough fruit to lampoon the Jell-O and cause it to not firm up? So, if anybody out there can help me on that one.
Okay. Do you want to go put that?
Let's see.
Do you want to put that in the fridge?
Yep.
Okay.
Should we grab our finished one?
Not yet. Okay, go ahead and put that. You got it? It's not too hot? Okay, you got it? I'm hoping we're not going to have a Jell-O mishap. Is there anywhere in the fridge to put it?
Probably not. No.
Okay, there's nowhere in the fridge.
Are we getting any feedback about what fruits I can add safely to this?
Okay.
Let me check.
You want to check for us, Gibbs?
Let's check.
Okay. She's going to check. I'm going to bring my lobby cards back up.
No, except for the one about you need to use canned pineapple. Fresh will never work.
Fresh pineapple will never work.
What about the oranges or grapefruit? Has anybody weighed in on that?
You chimed in on
It will
that.
be good, Carrie, but all fruit needs to be canned.
All fruit needs to be canned.
Cool.
Yeah.
That I did not know. Wow, I'm not prepared
Okay.
for that.
I had no idea.
I may just have to make mine straight Jell-O and have the fruit on the side or something. I think that's the way
A
I'm
lot
going
about our, I think that explains a lot about our Jell-O mishaps
Raw
over the year.
to pour this into the mold.
Raw fruit will screw up gelling. I think now
Raw fruit is what?
raw fruit will screw up the gelling.
Good to know. Good to know. I did not know this until just now. I think I'm going to make mine plain and just serve it with fruit on the side.
All of
I think
those
that's a good-
facts were from Donna Hill.
You. So if
All right, so here's what my Jell-O in the mold is looking like. I'm going to go stick this in the fridge really fast.
Okay, I'm letting mine chill for a little bit before I use. I do have my little vintage molds,
They're
Oh,
tiny.
cool.
but I'll add mine in a little bit.
Mandarin orange is canned. The acids will cause it not to gel.
Okay, well now we know. I'm going to show off more of my memorabilia while I'm at it though. One of my other, in addition to collecting on Anne, I collect on Anne's mom. So Anne's mom, Anna Lair, was a silent film actress like in the teens and early 20s. And so I have over the years found a few, here's a lobby card, found a few things, which I think sometimes in some photos you can really see Anne. She was in, Anne's mom was in Will Rogers' first film, Laughing Bill Hyde. So here's an oversized photo from Laughing Bill Hyde with Anne's mom. So it's always fun. It's always fun to kind of dig through and come across Anna Lair photos, which I think might be lost to history. I'll do a couple more lobby cards. One of my absolute favorite Anne films is a movie called Heat Lightning, which is in 1934. It's one of the last pre-codes. Aileen McMahon's really the star of it, but and she's fantastic. But Anne's also great. And so here's one of my lobby cards of Anne and Aileen from Heat Lightning. And I think I have 5 lobby cards from Heat Lightning. I got those on eBay in 2005, and I remember very vividly because I was on vacation in London with Darren and my 2 sisters. And when the auction ended, we had to go to an internet cafe so I could go and get my bid in and hit refresh. And there was one of the lobby cards I didn't get, but then I got 5 others. And I've never seen them since. So those are very special to me. I absolutely love my Heat Lightning lobby cards. And Heat Lightning was released by Warner Archive. So that one is exciting. And I think any of those Warner Archive movies and lots of, Anne was under contract to Warner Brothers for a number of years. So those are available through Warner Archive and I think can be rented on Amazon Prime. And
So
yes,
we
Gabriel.
have a suggestion for a photo for a certain one from
Yeah.
Fran Rice.
Oh, okay. My dad. What did my dad say?
Show a Hurrell photo.
Show a Hurrell photo. Oh, wow. Okay, I will. Hey, Gable, can you go in the drawer?
Yeah.
I think about 3/4 of the way through the portraits. There's going to be a portrait of Anne and her husband, and it's like a really formal portrait. If you can find that.
3/4.
Speaking of Anne and her husband, one of the things I want to talk about was Anne's personal life, because when I first saw 300 Match Like You, I was in college, and my first thought was, wow, this woman stands out. I mean, she's terrific. And I thought, why didn't she become Betty Davis? Why weren't there a zillion more performances on this caliber? What the heck happened?
Yeah, and that was my big question when I first discovered her. And what happened was, she was, in the MGM chorus. She was desperate. She really. I don't know that Anne ever wanted to be a movie star. She definitely wanted to be a film actress and wanted to do more than just be in the chorus. And so she worked really hard. And Joan Crawford was a friend of hers on the MGM lot, and Joan kind of helped her become more stylish. And so she was referred to as the dancer who looks like Joan Crawford, and just nothing happened. And so, she eventually got cast in Scarface, and that was largely because of another friend from MGM, Karen Morley, recommended Anne for the role of Cheska Camonte. And she just exploded after that. And Warner Brothers became super enamored with her, started borrowing her exclusively from Howard Hughes, who had signed her after Scarface. And so she seemed, to be on that track to just have a stellar career. Warner Brothers ultimately bought her contract from Howard Hughes for $40,000. This is in 1932, and the Depression's about to start hitting these studios. And just to give you some perspective of what a commodity Ann Dvorak was in early 1932, Howard Hughes got $40,000 for Ann's contract. He got $30,000 for Jean Harlow's when he sold Jean's contract to MGM. So, Anne was, considered, I think, such a kind of a sure thing. And she does, one movie at Warner Brothers, the crowd roars, and then they start borrowing her. The first movie they put her in is The Strange Love of Molly Louvain, and it's a starring role. So right out of the gate, they give her a starring role. And see if Daddy can help you find that Harrell, babe. And her co-star is a guy named Leslie Fenton. And he's 10 years older than her and very worldly. And they just fall madly in love. They elope within weeks. And Leslie Fenton was somebody who, made movies, made money off the movies, and then went to Europe and would just go traipse around Europe until the money was gone. And then he would then come back and work some more. And he didn't see any reason why Anne shouldn't do that with him. And Anne was somebody, she wanted to see the world. She wanted those experiences, but she was under contract to Warner Brothers. So, he convinced her, and I think she was exhausted. I think, she'd been, Warner Brothers worked their actors, I think, more than any other studio. And I think once she started hitting big and getting a lot of press, I think that was a little bit overwhelming. She's really young. And so when he suggests that they go to Europe for 8 months, that was it. So she did. So she walked out on her Warner Brothers contract, was in Europe for 8 months. And, along the way, badmouthed Warner Brothers, saying they were slave drivers, badmouthed Howard Hughes, saying that, he sold her up the river. And so when she comes back, Warner Brothers puts her to work. They want to make, they need to make some of that money back that they spent, but they never really star her in things after that. And they, she plays the supportive girlfriend, and her career just never regained that momentum after she did that. Which is
3 questions.
Oh, we have 3 questions. So first off, my dad asked for a Harrell. Here is, I have a number of Harrells. Most of them are hanging on the wall. But when Anne first became a freelancer in 1937, she went and had Harrell photograph her. And here's her and Leslie Fenton. So it's kind of like we should all be able to have our family portraits taken by George Harrell.
Oh, of course.
Of course. So there's Anne and Leslie.
Okay, so
after they've been married for a few years. Okay, we have some more questions.
We have from Danny Miller. Mm-hmm. How many film posters of hers do you have? Any 3 sheets or bigger?
Danny asked how many I have no idea how many posters I have. I really need to do an inventory. I do have 3 sheets. My earliest 3 sheet, and probably my prized possession, is I have the 3 sheet from Bright Lights, which is a 1935 film with Joey Brown. And it's a gorgeous 3 sheet. And that one I found, I think I found that one around 2003. So instead of doing homework in grad school, I would spend hours scouring the internet for movie poster sites. And I found the Bright Lights 3 sheet at some site. It was like a Swedish movie poster site. And so I hate negotiating, but I wanted the poster so much I had to negotiate it just because I couldn't afford it. And so, so I was able to finally get it. I have a We Who Are About to Die 3 sheet. I have a Flame of Barbary Coast. I Was an American Spy. I think I have everything on I Was an American Spy, including the 6 sheet, which I can turn. You can see it. It's hanging.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
So we frequently dine by the head of Ann Dvorak,
As we all should.
as we all should. That might be all the three. The I Was an American Spy was the only 6 sheet, and just to show how much I love, how much my devotion to motherhood, a Sweet Music 6 sheet came up like right when she was born. And just having a baby, I couldn't afford to buy a Sweet Music 6 sheet. So I don't even regret it, Gable. I do think about it often, though. Yes.
There's also, and then next question is from Diane Scoville. Who was Harrell?
Oh, George Harrell. The question was, who was Harrell? George Harrell was kind of the godfather of glamour photography. So just these portraits that are like in sharp focus, but lots of light and shadow. And he was at MGM early on. Norma Shearer. He took photos of Norma Shearer that helped her get the role in The Divorcee, which Darren will tell you more about at some point, I'm sure. And he worked at Warner Brothers and had an independent studio. And I think most like glamour photographers owe a debt to George Harrell, and those are when you can find those. And with Anne, I didn't realize that he had shot her, and so the first time I discovered this is I was in Hawaii. So Anne lived in Hawaii the last 20 years of her life. And I went there to do research and found an antique dealer on the North Shore that had gotten the contents of her storage unit. So after she died, you know, there was no estate. And so I called and said, "Do you have photos of Ann Dvorak?" And he's like, "Yeah, I actually do. I have some Harrells." And I thought, oh, he doesn't have Harrells. And so my mom and I rented a car and drove to the North Shore, and he had Harrells. So I think he had 3 Harrells, which I think I was able to afford 2 of them at the time. I went back a year later and got the other one. And at this point, a few more have popped up. But this one I got last year in Cleveland. So this one is.
By the way, there's a historian named Mark Vieira. He's written several books for those of you watching about George Harrell, and they are fantastic. He was trained by George Harrell. So I highly recommend those books. And I'll post them on the Facebook site or on my Facebook page after our live passage of Harrell books that people can check out.
Oh yeah, I can't. Like Mark is a fantastic writer and an absolute expert on Harrell, and I think he's done like 3 books on Harrell at least.
Yeah, a ton.
Yeah, I highly recommend those. You can, I highly
tell me
recommend.
about a scrapbook of Anne that you got in Hawaii.
Scrapbook, sure. The one thing before I go away from the lobby cards, though, I wanted to share one more thing. So as I mentioned, you know, Anne was in a movie called The Strange Love of Molly Louvain, and it's one of the few times she was actually able to star in a movie. And so I always figured since she was the star, she must be on every single lobby card. And I had never seen a lobby card from this film. So looked high and low, like in the memorabilia shops and in archives. I have a press book from that movie, and there's no photos of the lobby cards. And I was almost starting to wonder if maybe they just didn't exist, which seems weird because they just made lobby cards for everything. And so last year in 2019, Darren and my mom and Gable, and Darren's husband Eric and our friend Karen, we went to Ohio because one of the last great movie poster shops in the country that I know of is just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. And so we went and we spent 3 days between like 8 and 12 hours a day, just digging through everything, and it's just absolute heaven. And at one point, Darren's looking through a pile and finds a Molly Louvain lobby card. And he pulls it out, and it is trimmed. It is trimmed down from 11 by 14 to 8 by 10. And I think I did a full-on like horror movie scream because everybody came like running out from the room going, what is wrong? So this is it. And one of our friends said, well, you could just, you know, have it like, just get it restored and they'll recreate the border. And I can't because I don't know what the border looks like. So this remains a lobby card from The Strange Love of Molly Louvain, like remains my my movie memorabilia holy grail, and it breaks my heart, but of course I bought it anyway. But there it is. So if you have a Molly Louvain lobby card, let me know. I want it. And so the scrapbooks. We have 2 more questions
and a comment.
Okay, 2 questions and a comment. Go for it, Gable.
Okay, so we have the comment is Carrie, this is from Jen. I don't know how to say the last name.
Okay. What does Jen say to Carrie?
Carrie, if you're not usually a cook, I'm happy to cook with you via Zoom too another time.
Okay, so if somebody offering to give you cooking lessons, Carrie.
I'll take what I can get. I'll take what I can get.
And then we have, do I enjoy baking cooking with you?
Oh, do you enjoy cooking with me?
Yeah.
You do, huh? You like when we bake sweets.
I like baking brownies.
I'm a better baker than a cook.
And then, did Cora Sue ever work with or know Anne?
Cora Sue did not work with Anne, no, and she never met her. Yeah, I don't think Cora Sue had any, unfortunately, no. So we've asked her about that. Cora Sue was at MGM, and I think Anne was gone by then, so no, she never encountered her, unfortunately. So Cora Sue Collins she was a child star who's still with us, and she is absolutely fabulous, and we've gotten to know her. But Mary Carlisle, Mary passed away 2 years ago, and she was somebody that we got to know, and she actually did encounter Anne. So they were both minors, so they were under the age of 21, and they both went to court and signed their contracts with MGM the same day. So there's photos of them together, and they were briefly in the chorus. And Anne was the assistant choreographer, so she actually taught Mary Carlisle a time step and helped Mary get into the chorus. So we had a little bit of a connection there, but Cora Sue, not so much. So the scrapbook. So, we talked about the honeymoon, and that 1932 honeymoon when Anne walked out on her contract, it torpedoed her career, certainly. But, I think it remained kind of one of the most important experiences of her life. I think it was an absolute pivotal experience for her. And later on in her life, Anne was not somebody who liked to look back. So she usually didn't talk about the past, but the honeymoon, she did mention to people at times because I think it was such an important experience. And so when I wrote the book, I have an entire chapter on the honeymoon because that is just what an important period this was in her life. And I was really happy with the book. I'd worked on it for like 15 years. I thought I had really done the most complete telling of her story that I thought was possible. But I didn't have any photos of the honeymoon. And it really bothered me that, I thought that was like the one thing that was really missing from the book was no photos of this just important experience. And about 3 weeks after I turned in my final draft of the manuscript, I was contacted by somebody who said they had a bunch of Anne's stuff and they were really cryptic and really hard to deal with. And I finally got them to text me some photos of what they had. And it turned out they had the scrapbook of photos from this honeymoon, along with a lot of other things that Anne would have had in her apartment at the time of her death. So they had like canceled rent checks, and they had like her blue stamps, and some photos and some correspondence. And this person was so hard to deal with that I had to turn to my friend Darren. Darren comes back into it. He's an agent, so he's used to dealing, he's used to negotiating. I'm like, Darren, I can't deal with this person. Can you just do it for me? And he did, and I owe him a life debt because a few months later, the scrapbook came in the mail. And so I now own the scrapbook that has all of these photos from that 1932 honeymoon. And it came in enough time that I was able to swap out some photos. So there actually are photos of the scrapbook in my Ann Dvorak book, which I'm so happy. And so there's, a few hundred photos. Some of these, while they were on the honeymoon, Leslie Fenton made a movie called FP1 in Germany. I don't know if you can see. So there are like lots of photos of them on the set of this movie. And it's just incredible. And I think you can look at some of these photos and just tell that they were, two people that were just, madly in love with each other at the time. And so I feel like it's such an honor for me to be the custodian of something like this. So, I had mentioned I had tracked down the antique dealer who had the contents of Anne's storage unit. And so there were a lot of, like, the Horrells were in there and photos from her career were there. And those, including like a giant stack of 8x10s that she would have had on hand for autographs if she got requests for autographs. Which, by the end of her life, I think she probably wasn't getting contacted really anymore for autographs. I do have a giant stack of those. So if anybody wants photos of Ann Dvorak, I sell those for $10. But the scrapbook photos were something that she actually kept in her apartment. So I was able to deduce that this person that had this stuff, this was stuff from her apartment. And so I think these things are so special that I did want to be able to share them. So I've scanned them and I put a lot of them online, but I think, looking through things online isn't always the best way to interact with objects, especially if you wanted them curated, and it's not permanent. So I self-published this book a few years back, which you can get on Amazon, and it's just a little scrapbook of the honeymoon photos. So I don't think it's all of them, but it's some of the nicer ones. And so that's on Amazon. So you can go on and order it if you want to travel.
We should mention they're having a sale at University of Kentucky Press, and people can pick up a copy of your Ann Dvorak book.
Yeah, so
really low price.
Yeah, so right now Kentucky, my publisher, University Press of Kentucky, is doing a blowout warehouse sale. So if you go to their website, there's a code probably on the homepage, and you can get this for $10 right now. So it normally retails for $40. So go to Kentucky Press. This one you have to go to Amazon to get because I self-published it. But yeah, this one you can get for, if you haven't read it yet, you can get for $10. I bought 6 copies because I was out. So
and you know what struck me when I read your book about Anne is that how unique she was, because a lot of starlets, when asked about their hobbies, they would say something like, I like to sail or play tennis. Anne had a walnut farm and she liked to study bacteria under a microscope. So she wasn't the average garden variety run-of-the-mill Hollywood actress. And tell us kind of about the quirky intellectual side of Anne.
Yeah, so Anne, she went to a private school, the Page School for Girls in Highland Park, that she did graduate from, but she never went to college. So she didn't have that higher education, which is something I think that always bothered her. So later on in life, like, she claimed that she went to Occidental College, and Occidental has absolutely no record of her ever attending. So I think that was something that always kind of weighed on her. So I think she did always try to have these, maybe more like intellectual, like academically leaning pursuits later on. Bacteriology was one of them, although I think she did get that from Leslie Fenton. And I
love the picture of her in full Hollywood hair and makeup, looking at a microscope and studying.
Yeah, so here's Rockefeller Center Weekly, but there's Anne, full hair and makeup, at her house on Woodman, practicing bacteriology, which is, and she was asked about it a lot. She talked about bacteriology a lot. So it was something that she and Leslie Fenton were legitimately into for quite a while. They eventually donated their equipment to a gentleman studying cancer research. So she did do that. She had an incredible green thumb. So her and Leslie Fenton had a walnut ranch, like a 50-something acre walnut ranch in Encino that they built in 1934. They built a home on it. And they actually, made a profit off of their walnut harvest every year. And she also had a greenhouse, and she had this incredible green thumb, and she would grow, different varieties of orchids and, put them into local flower shows. And so I think that was a big reason why she moved to Hawaii, later on. I think she really, connected with the land and just loved plants and loved greenery so much. But she made her own hats. So her hats show up. At one point she had, I don't know, she designed like some charm bracelet that I don't think she ever actually patented. So she did that. She always wanted to be a writer. So, she had various writing pursuits over the years. During the war, Leslie Fenton was a British citizen by birth. So he enlisted in the Royal Navy. And so a full year before the United States entered the war, she went to Britain to be near him. So she got charter like on a freighter boat and, sailed through hostile waters and was stranded in Lisbon for, a month or so, and then flew into London during the Blitz. And she would, she did make some movies during the war in England, but she also drove an ambulance, and she was a BBC broadcaster and a war correspondent, and, part of the Women's Land Army. So she's absolutely just fascinating. And later on, when she was in Hawaii, she wrote an 18-volume abridged history of the world and recorded herself reading it. So she made an audiobook out of it, and it was designed to be marketed to universities. But unfortunately, it never got off the ground. But that was a major pursuit later on in her life after she retired from film.
We
have some questions?
And a question.
Okay.
So we have 2 comments from Kelly Pratt and Donna Hill. The scrapbook and the pictures are amazing.
There. The scrapbook and the pictures are amazing.
And Donna Hill also said, Carrie, you can cook with me. And then Diane
What?
said,
Donna Hill is also offering to cook with you.
Yay!
and Diane Scoville said, what's the title of the book on Amazon?
On Amazon, oh, the title of the book, it is The Inseparables. So I think if you, how do I put it? I think if you do Ann Dvorak and Leslie Fenton.
And of course, I gotta plug this again. Ann Dvorak, Hollywood's Forgotten Rebel by Christina Rice.
And then are we ready to continue on Jello?
Are we ready to continue with Jello? Do you want to go get the Jello?
Yeah.
Okay,
Jello.
go get the.
And Christina is gonna unveil the final product. Sadly, I don't have a final product to unveil due to my mishaps, but I do have one nod to Ann's cooking skills, though, to present to you.
So I'm gonna pour. Well, I was cooling my Jello, and I'm gonna pour it in the
We
mold.
need to put in the lemon juice.
And we need to put in the lemon juice. Sorry, thank you, Gable. Thank you for reminding me that we need to put in the lemon juice.
We need lemon juice.
So yeah, this is an interesting Ann Dvorak recipe. It's certainly not my favorite Ann Dvorak recipe. So my favorite. So as we said, Ann, lived on a walnut ranch, and at one point even toyed with marketing walnuts. They were going to have some sort of walnut packaging with Ann's face on it, and I don't think that ever happened, sadly. But Ann's favorite recipe when she had guests was to get walnut leaves and put them on a plate, and then just put raw walnuts on a plate.
Which I did, since I messed up the Jello.
Hey.
So
You let me know how that tastes.
So
I will do. I may have a walnut right now in Ann's.
So now we're putting in our mandarin.
Yeah.
So I'll show.
And incidentally, oh yeah, they were putting in the mandarin oranges. So I did do a test. So these mandarin oranges are, they're not canned, but they were just packaged. And so I have verified that these work. These will gel. So we're going to go ahead and do that.
Pour, pour, and then we can show.
And I would like to mention while we're talking about the Walnut Ranch, Anne started subdividing it. So her and Leslie Fenton, their marriage unfortunately didn't survive. They came home after the war. He was injured at the Battle of St. Nazaire. But by 1946, the marriage had dissolved and they got divorced, unfortunately. And so she started subdividing the Walnut Ranch. And then ultimately, it was, I think, around 50 acres, and it went down to about 2 acres. But the house remained there. I became friends with the 4th owner. It was a gentleman named Arnie Scheibel who purchased the house in 1959. And so I became friends with him. And he actually, can you put that in the fridge?
No, I need you to.
You need me to do that? I'm going to put it aside for now. And so he actually met Anne once, and he actually went out to dinner with her and her mom. It's a great story, and it's in the book. My Jell-O molds are so small that I have tons of Jell-O left over, so I'm just going to put them in wine glasses, and we'll just chill those.
Not.
And so I ended up, and the house at the time that I met him in 2006 looked almost identical. And she was photographed on that property in Encino a lot. And so when my husband, Josh, and I got married in 2007, we actually had the ceremony at Anne's house.
I love that. That is so cool.
Too.
And tell them about standing on the diving board in your wedding gown.
So there's lots of pictures of Anne on the diving board. I have tons of photos of her posing on the diving board. And so that was my main request, was to be able to stand on the diving board in my wedding gown, which we did. And that ended up that year being the Christmas card, was me and Josh on the diving board at Anne's place. So I have a few more pieces of memorabilia, if that's okay. People are still sticking around. Oh, should I show the final?
Show the final product.
Here's the final product.
Yay, the crowd goes wild.
So our little seashell Jell-O molds with the mandarin oranges. So that is our version.
And Anne's recipe mentions either served with mayonnaise or whipped cream. Obviously, whipped cream is the way we're going to go.
We are not doing mayonnaise. No way, no how. Are you gonna try it?
No,
No, she's not gonna try it. My daughter's very
I
picky.
will eat pineapple.
You'll eat the pineapple? I didn't use pineapple because, as we learned, pineapple doesn't gel.
I'll eat regular pineapple.
Okay.
Learned a lot of things taking this or trying to.
So I have, if I can just share a few more things
I
again.
love it. I love it, and I'm
I could
sure
do
everybody else would too.
22 hours, but I'm not going to subject you to that much, Anne.
That's we've got people that are going to stick around for that if you want to.
So yeah, just to show like how much oddball stuff was around back in the day to promote movie stars. So these are a bunch of matchbooks with Anne on them, just super random. Here's another random. It's a horoscope. So it's your horoscope, but Anne's on it. And I think that was a vending machine that you could pull out your horoscope, and it would have
Studios did not miss a trick.
never. And then let me find. This is one of my favorite. Let me turn on my. I have lots of lantern slides, but this is one of my favorite, and I hope you can see this.
Oh, that's beautiful.
This is The Man Hater, which was Anne was in 3 films as a child. So she was in 2 features and 1 short. So this was a film she made. And so this is her at age 6. And so this is one of my absolute favorite pieces that I got on eBay years ago. Turn this
Those
off.
are very fragile too.
Yeah.
And we have some more.
Great finds.
Okay. And Gable says we have some more comments.
So we have Shelly Pratt says everyone's aprons are amazing.
Oh,
Everyone's aprons.
Oh, I will say that these aprons, Gable and I, we got these in Hawaii. It was a trip to Hawaii that I paid for with the royalties from the book. So the royalties weren't huge, but it was enough for us to have a family trip to Hawaii.
So we have our matching.
We have our matching aprons. And that was something, and I'm not like an outdoorsy beachy person at all. And I never had any desire to go to Hawaii, and I had to research Anne, and fell in love with it. And so we have gone like multiple times.
And we also
I think Anne would approve, absolutely.
and we also have Jenny Lenz
Mhm.
says keep going.
Keep going. I can go. I can go.
You know, maybe we should do another one. Do an Ann Dvorak series, Ann Dvorak marathon of.
We could do an Ann Dvorak marathon. Again, so here's a photo of her at her Encino ranch. And it's hard, you can't really see it, but there's a photo of like a stone bench, which as far as I know is still there. And I actually have photos in the LAPL photo collection. We have photos of the third owners. The third owners, the wife, Mrs. Teeter, I forget Mrs. Teeter's first name, but she was part of a club called the Hilltoppers. And so they would have, they would host meetings and events on the property all the time. So we actually have photos in the LAPL photo collection, which I think you can go to our collection and just search for Ann Dvorak, and anything remotely related to her will come up because I have tagged it as such. And here's one of my other favorite things. So these are Ann Dvorak screen worn jewelry. So they're earrings and a brooch.
Joseph of Hollywood?
Yes. Yeah, it is Joseph of Hollywood. And she wore these in Abilene Town. So there's the earrings.
Oh, cool.
They're clip-on earrings, and they hurt so bad. So I very seldom
I
wear
wear
them.
clip-on earrings. My ears will turn neon purple. I cannot
Yeah.
do it.
And then here's the brooch, which is here. And there's the brooch. So yeah, that was from that Joseph of Hollywood auction. There was a necklace, which I didn't get, that Claire Trevor had worn in something else. And there was another necklace that Betty Davis had worn in a photo shoot once. And so that necklace went for like $5,000. So anytime it's Betty.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things I pulled out is this journal. And this was from I got it with the scrapbook. So this was, part of the things that would have been in her apartment with her at the end. And this journal only has one entry from 1977. But I wanted to read this entry, which I do quote in the book. But I think it's, so incredible because people will sometimes ask, do you think she regretted the honeymoon? And so this is what she wrote in 1977, about 2 years before she died, in this journal. When I think back on my life, I am ashamed of myself. I didn't study my profession well enough. I was too busy with studying science and literature, collecting and reading my library, and grooming plants and keeping in touch with the soil. I made a tragically disinterested figure of an actress. Also, getting married in too much of a hurry without really knowing the man, I threw my life and my career out the window, which I think is so heartbreaking. But at the same time, I don't know. I think if she had to do it all over again, I don't know if she would have done it any different though. Um, but yeah, to have like that kind of insight at the end of her life, to me, is kind of tragic, but also just incredibly special and just so insightful. So, and I think, and it's sad for us that we saw a glimpse of what she would have been capable of, but she never got those really good roles. I think she almost always, took what was given to her and did a lot with it. Some of her brief appearances, especially later on in movies like A Life of Her Own with Lana Turner and Our Very Own with Ann Blythe, she's in it for minutes and just walks away with those movies. So she always did a lot with a little. And I think it's too bad we didn't get to see, I think, what she was truly, truly capable of had she been given like a really great role with a great director at a good studio.
We have another
We have
question.
another question.
For every Betty Davis or Joan Crawford or Katharine Hepburn, there are a lot of actresses that could have been, might have been, and should have been, and weren't. And then for every Ann Dvorak, there's actresses that never got more than an extra role or a bit role. And it's such a hard thing to have a career like that, much less sustain one. And
yeah, I think, you never, and who knows with Anne? I mean, it's always up to the film audiences. And I think, she really torpedoed her career by walking out on it before film audiences really and truly weighed in. So, who knows? We have no way of knowing like what would have happened. I think she was capable, I think even though I think her and Betty Davis had very, very different acting styles, I think they were suited for the same types of roles. And so, the thought of seeing Anne in some of those movies just, kills me. And, early on, Howard Hughes tried to get her the role in Rain. And it was like reported that she would be in it. And eventually went to Joan Crawford. And, despite what Joan Crawford would say about that film, I think she's fantastic in it. Like, I love that movie and I think she's amazing. But to think about what Anne would have done, and it would have been a very different performance than Joan's, but yeah, it kills me a little bit to think of like what could have been.
Yeah,
okay, and Gable says we have more questions.
We have two more questions.
Two more questions.
The first, do I have a favorite classic movie actress?
Gable?
I don't know.
Do you have a favorite classic movie actress?
I don't know.
Well, you do, but you like her much more for being on television later on.
Oh, Lucille Ball.
Gable loves Lucy, and she dressed up as Lucy for Halloween a couple years ago.
And I got
right.
What? Yes.
You're raising her right.
You're raising her right. And what's the other question? You also like Clark Gable, though. You'll give him a pal, right? You'll deal with him.
Lucy.
You like, I know, you love
And
Lucy.
then we have another question.
Okay, what's the
about
other question?
Beautiful earrings.
Oh, a question about the earrings. Okay.
The question is, who made those earrings? Joseph of Hollywood?
Yes, these are Joseph of Hollywood. There was a huge auction, I think it was November of 2017.
Yeah, I went to the preview. A lot of people went to the preview just to kind of look and gawk at the stuff.
There was I think you can go online and it was Julian's. So I recommend looking at the catalog because there was crazy. There was, like Vivian Lee's, some of her jewelry from Gone with the Wind, the coral necklace that she wears to the barbecue was there. Yeah. So they're Joseph of Hollywood. So they're costume jewelry. And I also got, it's in my jewelry box, I got this little pin, this turquoise and silver pin that Barbara Bel Geddes wears in The Long Night, which is a movie with Anne. And it was pretty cheap. So I thought, I'll just get, even though Anne didn't wear it, it's in an Anne movie. So
That's German.
Is there other questions?
No, there is not. There is, Donna Hill said she would have been great in Rain.
Yeah, she would have. Donna says she would have been great. I agree. She would have been fantastic in Rain. I think that was again, love Joan in it, but missed opportunity for Anne.
And then Jenny Lem says, but then Betty Davis did focus on her career and wasn't that much happier or satisfied. Anne's devotion to science and soil probably fulfilled her more than acting.
I think she might have a point. So Jenny says Betty was very focused on her career, but wasn't necessarily fulfilled. Whereas, Anne, I think at the time, I think Anne probably was, fulfilled at the time. And it's interesting, she lived on the Walnut Ranch with Leslie Fenton from 1934 until 46, I think was when she sold it. So she lived there for a long period of time. It's probably the happiest time of her life, I would think. And so years later, in the late 60s, when the owner, Arnie, took Anne and her mom out to dinner, and then they went back to the house. And he said that no recognition registered on Anne's face when they went to the house, this house she had built and lived in. And he said it was the weirdest thing. And I don't know if it was she just didn't want to think about maybe. And again, she just wasn't somebody who looked to the past. And so I think, by that time in the late 60s, she was in the midst of, her third marriage, which, was horrible, horrible experience. And he was very abusive and spent her money. And she was at the time trying to leave him. So yeah, I do think it was interesting that she just kind of blocked out this happy part of her life.
Another question.
We have another question, says Gable.
From Jack Field.
Hey, Jack Fields.
What are some you could see Anne in?
What are some other movies I could see Anne in? The one movie, when I watched it, and to me just screamed Ann Dvorak, is Claire Trevor's role in Key Largo, which Claire got an Academy Award for it, so she is fabulous. But when I saw that movie, I went, oh my God, Anne could have done this. And there people have argued with me that no, absolutely not. But I think she would have been fantastic in it. I absolutely could have seen her in something like that. I think like All This in Heaven too. I think some of those Betty Davis roles, I could have absolutely seen Anne in. And I think she's known for, we're familiar with these kind of high wire performances. So Scarface and Three on a Match, and even going, and Heat Lightning, and even going to like A Life of Her Own, where she's just has this like nervous energy where she's kind of like bouncing off the screen. But if you look at her in a movie like The Private Affairs of Bellamy, which is one of my favorite post-war films, and that's with George Sanders and Angela Lansbury's in it, she's really low-key and really subdued, but also just, like very in control and very powerful, which I think just, kind of speaks to her range as an actress. She wasn't always jumping out of windows. How are we doing, kid?
That's all.
Is that all? Okay, I think
we're about to a little more than an hour. So, any final thoughts on Anne before we go?
Yeah, just when I first discovered her, which was 25 years ago, and I would talk to people, I would usually get like blank stares unless they were like absolute film buffs. And all these years later, her movies have gradually become more and more available. They get shown on Turner Classic Movies with some regularity. And so, I do think her star has grown. I do think she would be happy with that. And I'm thrilled. And I just hope people will, seek out her movies and watch her. I hope they'll read the book, not just because I wrote it, but, because I think her story needs to be told. And, as we talked about, like Warner Brothers was a studio, I think more than any other studio, that just worked their actors to absolute death. And, they were also the ones where their stars would fight back. And so James Cagney and Betty Davis both took Warner Brothers to court in 1936 to try to get out of their contracts. And I think their court cases still get talked about a lot. So Anne also took Warner Brothers to court for what she deemed an unlawful suspension. And she filed her court case before James Cagney did. So she actually did it before Cagney and before Betty Davis. And, it wasn't successful. It didn't really work out for her. But I want people to know that, she was willing to try to buck the studio system, even before these other like more well-known stars are. So I just hope you'll go and seek out Anne. Her movies are out there, and she's fabulous. And I love her. And she is, I think sent my life into directions I would have never dreamed possible when I first watched Three on a Match in 1995. So I just have so much affection for her.
Now we have 2 more comments.
Oh, and we have 2 more comments before we wrap it up.
3 more comments.
3 more comments.
And a question.
Okay.
Jenny Lynn says, Anne could have done so many great films. She had such depth and expressiveness. Donna Hill says, yes, gay Dawn was there, and I love Claire. And then Bavara Boyd Doss said, love this. Thank you for such a lovely afternoon.
Oh, well, thank you to everybody for tuning in. We really weren't sure if people were going to tune in or not, but I mean, I will, I'm always willing to just even like yell into the void about Anne. I did it for like a number of years, but finally people are, finally people seem to have caught on about how fabulous she is.
And thank you for being my very first guest on the Hollywood Kitchen. This was really awesome of you to help me with the technology and help me figure this whole thing out. And I know if the world were perfect, I'd be standing in your kitchen next to you right now and it would be different, but you have been so
I have so much more memorabilia I didn't show, Carrie. So when we're on the other side of this pandemic, I will see you here in my kitchen.
I am living for that day.
Yeah. That's okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much. And stay tuned, guys, because I am planning more installments with authors, historians, collectors, and recipes. So stay tuned and come visit me again in Hollywood Kitchen.
Thank you. And if you have questions, Christina@AnnDvorak.com. Always happy to talk about Anne. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.